All right, so for the Carolina Panthers, really, really locked into this team. I was 27-12 on bets with them over the course of the year. And the only thing that got me a little bit was the over under. They had some goofy ones, especially towards the end of the year, but pretty good on there. So, as far as their season goes, I mean, maybe not what they were hoping for, but I don't really know if they could expect it much better. I mean, some people thought that they were in contention for the first overall pick, which I would have told you at the beginning of the year was kind of nuts given the offensive talent they had. But you saw basically that their defense killed them the whole year. Really, really, really bad. And well, I think there's some chance to get better, and we're going to get into that. That's definitely what caused the problems. Now, there were people talking about it. It was Teddy Bridgewater. He just didn't do enough. But, man, he was put in a basically impossible spot if you were actually expecting him to succeed. And I would argue he probably was decent, especially their offensive talent. Not crazy good, especially without Christian McCaffrey. I definitely think he got overrated some. And it's not like they had, some great coach or great scheme or anything like that. So I don't think Teddy Bridgewater's a problem now. Is he the answer as far as a Super Bowl quarterback? No, I'm pretty confident in that. But is he as bad as I think a lot of people are characterizing him as? Definitely not. So let's get into this position by position. Quarterback first. Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater. Like I said, not the answer for Super Bowl, but with him, you are talking about somebody who consistently and efficiently executes offense. And in positive systems like the Saints last year or the Vikings back when he was there, well, they were a little defense first, but he's shown that he can succeed given fairly easy opportunities. And I'm not going to say easy opportunities because I actually don't think he's as uncreative as a lot of people like to attribute to him. He can, especially down the field. He does not just throw the ball only 5 yards from the field. Now, he doesn't take advantage of deep areas of the field the way that other quarterbacks do, especially the good ones. But he, given one-on-one opportunities, will throw the ball down the field to the outside, which is probably the single most important thing for a quarterback to be able to do as far as targeting down the field, just being willing to take advantage like that. Not great at it or anything, but I just want to point out that Teddy Bridgewater is not quite this complete check-down guy the way that like a Jeremy Garoppolo is. So yeah, well, I don't think he's the answer going forward. This like rush, they should not be in a rush to get rid of him, even if they're trying to compete next year. If you're just trying to make the playoffs, you can do a lot worse than Teddy Bridgewater. Receiver, they're good there for sure. They're again though that is I think the spot on this team that gets the most overrated. Curtis Samuel, really good. He is going to be a free agent, and we'll see if he comes back. I think maybe not. He's going to demand a lot on the market, and for good reason. He's really, really good. He legitimately does useful things. He creates space. He creates points. But as a receiver, he's not super elite. And really, the same thing goes for DJ Moore. Really similar players, and I would maybe argue Curtis Samuel's a little bit better. Now, DJ Moore is a little bit better of a traditional receiver as far as getting open route running and that type of thing, but he's not great at that the way that like a Calvin Ridley is in division. He's really not close, to be honest. He is better after the catch, and he will be useful as long as he plays in the NFL because of that. When you combine, a not bad receiver with a really good player after the catch, he's going to be really useful. But is he a top, 10 guy? For sure not. And you're going to see, especially if they lose Curtis Samuel, that they could start to have issues with consistent separation from their receivers. Robbie Anderson, probably the best actual receiver on this team. And definitely worked out for them. The contract they gave him was kind of a flyer, and it worked out completely. Like I said, best receiver on the team, and he's going to be useful again as long as he plays. Robbie Anderson, really, really good. So there are other guys, not a ton there. Seth Roberts, Brandon Zylstra, Farrell Cooper. I don't really care about any of them going forward. Farrell Cooper's actually all right as a fourth, fifth receiver, but nothing really I care about there. So then the tight ends. Man, one of the... I don't want to say worst tight ends in the NFL because actually, while they're not good, I actually think they at least do useful things. Chris Manhertz, Ian Thomas specifically, both of them have skills that have them belong on an NFL field. Ian Thomas can actually kind of create separation even better than some other guys that think people think are way better than him, like a Darren Waller even. Ian Thomas can get open maybe a little bit better as far as route running goes. Now, he just doesn't match the physical aspect at all, so any drag route or something, he's just not going to run away from defenders the way that Darren Waller can, so I don't want to get that confused. I'm speaking specifically about the technical aspect of route running, but Chris Manhertz, though, yeah, really useful blocker, not great as a receiver, not even really good, but he's not the worst thing in the world, and if they were your second and third or third and fourth tight ends, you'd be really good. First and second, though, that's not good enough probably for a reasonable NFL offense. So then the running back, Christian McCaffrey, is clearly the best running back in the NFL, not close. Creates points better than anyone else, he actually does the thing that matters most for running backs, which is turning drives into touchdowns. He does that better than anyone else. And getting him back is a big deal. Now, is he still as impactful as the top receivers in the NFL? No, because he is a running back, but he's as close as you're probably ever going to find from that position. So they're set there if they keep him. Otherwise, Mike Davis had a huge year as a backup, and I think there is actually some to that. He's not completely a product of the system the way some of the running backs I'll talk about are. Now, he does lack top-end speed, which limits his actual ceiling as a useful guy, but he creates space, and he actually does an okay job of turning plays into touchdowns as well. So while I don't love him, and he's a little bit older for a running back at this point, he's fine, definitely. I mean, you saw that with him as your running back, you're not stuck. Other than that, the Reggie Bonifant had a couple of nice plays. He actually is a pretty fast guy. I wouldn't mind him being on the roster next year, but don't really care going forward. So, yeah, overall with the skill positions, I mean, they're good enough to compete probably if their defense gets better to even a reasonable extent. I mean, we saw this year that they actually, in some games, could be kind of yardage monsters, and they could keep up with even like the Chiefs later in the season and stuff like that. Now, without Curtis Samuel, that gets harder for sure, and they do need to work on upgrading, but they're there. As far as the offensive line goes, that I want to give a ton of credit to their coaching staff for, and the players themselves. They put together a pretty good. But the coaching staff, yeah, they put together players who not super talented or super relevant going into the year together, and they actually made a above average offensive line. Now, I will say Taylor Moton, an elite tackle, that helps a lot. They just franchise tagged him very recently. Me making this video, and worth every penny. Absolutely elite at that position. No complaints at all. Really, he does everything at a really high level. Their other tackle, though, I mean, listen, you're talking about Russell Okung, who's good when he plays, but only played a few games. Trent Scott and Greg Little. Trent Scott, I thought this one on the Chargers too. I don't think he's a huge issue if he's on your team. Now, he can have issues, especially with speed rushers over time, but that's something that applies to a lot of players. I don't think he's actually quite a disaster. And Greg Little, yeah, that may be looking like a miss as far as a high draft pick is concerned. He's not awful. He's not going to torpedo your team if he's on your offensive line, but he's not good enough to make a difference in a positive way, really, in any respect. So maybe moving on from him this offseason wouldn't surprise me, but do I think he's terrible? No, but definitely not someone I'm going to count on with any meaningful level for going forward. As far as the interior goes, Chris Reed, John Miller, some weakness there. Chris Reed was actually, I would give a lot of credit to Chris Reed. I didn't really know who that was going into the year. And he played okay. Again, he played at a level that is not a disaster for your offense. When you're talking about these backup offensive linemen, that's really all you need. And that's something that is useful. Not sucking is really useful as far as the interior offensive line goes. John Miller, though, a little more towards sucking. Not terrible, but he does actually have some plays where he can kind of destroy your own offensive game plan by losing too quick, but not awful. I don't expect him to really play next year. So Matt Paradis, too, one of the better centers in the NFL for sure. Some issues in pass protection. He's a little bit weak, but definitely you're going to be fine with him, and he's better even than, like I said again in the last video I made, a little bit better than even Alex Mack in division. So they're probably fine in the interior offensive line going forward. They have some other guys too that I'm actually really interested in. Dennis Daley, player who's played tackle and guard for them. I'm intrigued, and I think he could actually be a pretty useful player going forward in his career. He's a legitimately good run blocker, and I don't think even for a later pick rookie last year, he was bad in pass protection even against really good players. So we'll see how that goes going forward, but he's someone I would keep my eye on too. So overall, the offense going into the offseason, they need help. They do need some upgrades on the offensive line, talent-wise, given the injury situation with a lot of their players and probably the loss of depth they're going to go through. And they will need just a better receiver if they lose Curtis Samuel, because they are going to lose a lot if they lose him and how their offense goes. But the defense, the real issue of this team, what they need to work on the offseason. And on that side of the ball, they had a season characterized by just some horrible players that they were giving snaps to that kind of torpedoed the rest. Because as we go through position by position, you're going to see that they actually have really promising young players who, going forward, I'm going to believe in to a point, getting a lot better, especially as a defense overall. But they have players, like I said, that are just terrible, that I'm worried about them leading on, that are going to continue to cause problems if they keep giving them opportunities. So on the defensive line, first round pick Derrick Brown absolutely worked out. Now, Was he drafted too high? Probably, given what he does. But I actually don't think he's a complete non-factor as a pass rusher as maybe some people thought. I know there was some talk that he could do stuff, and let's just say I believe in him for sure. He's really good. He legitimately has mobility as a guy his size. He's really strong. He actually did what they were talking about in terms of physically overpowering even NFL linemen. Now, he's not dominant, so I don't want to go crazy, but he's going to be a really useful player for the Panthers. His whole rookie contract at the very least. I'm very confident in that. So you got him. As far as the other players in the interior, I mean, listen, there's a little bit there. Specifically, Zach Kerr, who they kind of got on a cheaper contract from the Arizona Cardinals, was really good. He legitimately penetrates the line of scrimmage pretty well. He knows what he's doing. He creates issues in the backfield, and he, as a defender, is really useful. Now, he missed a lot of the season with injuries, and that hurt them, as well as, of course, Kawan Short, who got hurt in the first game of the year, I think, and now no longer on the team. That really hurt them, but the depth is kind of the issue. Brevion Roy, late round pick, and he actually looked like a late round pick. He's not useful. He's really bad, and he just doesn't stand up in run defense and provides nothing as a pass rusher. And probably shouldn't be playing any snaps going forward. And by probably, I mean absolutely shouldn't. Woodrow Hamilton as well. Came up from the practice squad a couple times to play interior once they kind of had some injury issues, and nothing to note there. On the edges, Brian Burns, pretty good this year. Now, I think there are players in the Panthers I'm worried about getting overrated because they looked so bad or looked decent in a really bad situation. But Brian Burns, at the very least, again, is going to be useful going forward. One of the best pure speed rushers in the NFL. Now, that skill set I've talked about in other videos isn't actually incredibly useful if you don't do anything else, which is the case with Brian Burns. He's still really weak as a point of attack run defender and get kind of smoked sometimes. Now he's better than other players like a Dante Fowler in that respect, and he can actually get in the backfield and penetrate a little bit, but that's not super frequent, and most of the time he's going to kind of get shoved off the ball. Stephen Weatherly didn't really work out. He was okay, actually pretty similar to a player who just left the Panthers in Mario Addison, but kind of just a veteran run defender who works hard as a pass rusher, and they're not going to miss him when he's gone, to be honest. I think he already signed with the Vikings. But these other guys, and these are what I'm excited about. So Austin Larkin, Yetur Gross-Matos, and Efe Obada all showed stuff that make me think they're going to be really useful defenders, especially even as soon as next year. Yetur Gross-Matos was, really good when he was, he's hurt for a lot of the year, but he legitimately showed that he can beat NFL tackles quickly in ways that don't just make me think, oh, it's because the quarterback did something or it's because he got skied. He was legitimately one-on-one beating guys in a rather quick fashion, and that's something that you can't really put a price on. That's one of the most useful skills in football, and if they have some with him, which I think they do, that's a really big positive. And actually, Efe Obada really similar, maybe a little bit less, but he moved the inside a little bit. Actually, decent as a run defender, and decent. That's a little strong. Okay as a run defender, but as a penetrator and as a pass rusher, they have something Efe Obada too, for sure. Really like that guy. Austin Larkin, good run defender. As an edge, isn't going to be really nothing as a pass rusher probably, but between those three, they all have legitimately useful skills that in a better defense, I think, are going to show up, and they have something there. So on that defensive line, they have the pieces, like I said, going forward to at least be decent. The second level, that's where a lot of the issues come up. First, I'll get Jeremy Chin out of the way. People should be careful with him. I think he's getting a lot of the Buda Baker treatment, who I feel similarly about this year. I think they're both pretty good players, but their mistakes are really glossed over because they had some, frankly, lucky highlights, just recovering fumbles, that type of thing. Now, that is a useful skill in terms of being around the ball, but there's a reason that's such a kind of high-low event, whether it happens in any given season, and it's because it's not really controlled by the actual player. It's more of a just being around the ball, which, again, is a positive. I'd rather they do that than they don't, but I'm not going to depend on Jeremy Chin to be a super turnover-creating monster year over year, because especially as a run defender, he still has pretty bad mental lapses, and as a pass defender, he doesn't really have the technique to cover guys one-on-one the way that the Panthers maybe asked him to, especially later into the season. He's not terrible. He's not going to get burned the way that an actual linebacker will a lot of times, but it's not like he's locking dudes down at all, and they kind of ask him to do too much, and I would be worried really going into next year, given how well he played this year, that they put too much on him, and he starts kind of getting smoked a lot, especially in pass coverage. We'll see, though. That's assuming a lot. Shaq Thompson, though, that's the main one I want to talk about. really big issue. Gave him a big contract, moved him to middle linebacker, and he's terrible. Really, really bad. He barely does anything useful, so he has the speed to occasionally make plays in and around the line of scrimmage, but he just doesn't understand the game very well at all. And calling shots on a defense, that type of player, like I said, transition middle linebacker, calling a lot of the plays for their defense. There's a reason it got so ugly, and he's a huge part of it. He didn't have guys in the right position a lot. He was not in the right position himself a ton of the time, and he doesn't make impactful plays with any level of frequency. And when he does, frankly, it's probably just him exploding to a gap, guessing, and just getting right, which doesn't happen very often. And them depending on him, it's really bad. Now, if they were to sign or draft a legitimate inside linebacker and then move him and Jeremy Chin both outside, I think with a smart fits coordinator, you could be looking at something decent at least. And we see Shaq Thompson perform okay next to Luke Kuechly before, granted. Basically impossible to get Luke Kuechly again, but I'm really worried about Shaq Thompson. He's just a bad football player, basically. And with the contract he's on, the way they depend on him, it's not good. There are other guys, Tahir Whitehead, even worse. Tahir Whitehead, can't believe he got as many snaps as he did. He was maybe even the main reason that they were so bad. He is athletically at this age for them. Couldn't do anything, and you saw it last year when he was on the Raiders too. They should have known that was coming. I can't really believe they gave him snaps. Jermaine Carter did actually play some later in the year, and he was better for sure. He was better than Shaq Thompson. Now, he lacks sideline to sideline athleticism, straight line speed, kind of the opposite player to those guys, but as an interior run defender and linebacker, he's actually good, and I think that skill set gets undervalued actually because of the move to pass, such a passing league. Teams, especially, listen, there's still a bunch of stubborn, dumb teams that still run up the middle, and no matter how modern you are, if they do that and you have the wrong personnel to meet that, you're gonna just get absolutely steamrolled, and Jermaine Carter can at least help with that. In the secondary, again, horrible players playing large numbers of snaps. Dante Jackson, I think pretty easily the worst number one corner in the NFL. He can't really cover anyone except for bad speed receivers, which is not a valuable skill set, to say the least. Ursula Douglas played a little bit better than he was on the Eagles previously, but he himself wasn't exactly good. Still, he just looked better than everyone else. And while I do think he has a little bit of potential as far as covering bigger guys, not something I'm excited about. Eli Apple played a couple snaps at the beginning of the year, had disciplinary issues, and got cut. And frankly, that's probably bad for the Panthers because despite his discipline issues and his reputation as a bad player from first-round pick, he played really well for the Saints pretty much his whole time there. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back in the NFL if he gets his mental solved. And he's a good player because he is a good player most of the time he's on the field. Troy Pride, third-round pick, terrible, horrible. Terrible is not even strong enough. He was almost single-handedly, despite what I've been criticizing the other guys on this defense. The early season games when he was kind of trusted to be their nickel corner before they moved to Cornell, who I'll talk about next, he was really bad. He got burned almost every snap he played, and it didn't really get better into the year. He just played less, so it was less obvious. And I would be shocked if he's ever a good player, to be honest with you. I don't think players get that much better compared to the rookie year, even in corner. And while it's possible, I wouldn't have any faith in him. Corn Elder, though, was at least marginal as a guy. He doesn't do anything that, positive. If he's your slot corner, maybe you're counting on a spot to not get so destroyed, but you're not getting any positives either. So in the secondary, or a corner specifically, going into next year, they have basically half of a marginal starting corner in Ursula Douglas, and that's going to be a real issue because it's hard to find good corners even in free agency. At safety, last spot, Trey Boston still performs at a above average level as he has basically his whole career, would continue to wherever he plays next, whether that's the Panthers still or not. I think he actually did sign an extension, but again, with him, he's just a above average center field safety. Doesn't have the range of guys like Marcus Williams or Devontae KZ, and you're not actually in all that great of a spot if he's your free safety. You're not a disaster, but when there's nothing in front of him, he doesn't raise the floor of your defense really. And then there are other safety spot, basically nothing. Justin Burris is bad, not horrible, but he's like these other players, he just doesn't do anything positive. And Sam Franklin, Miles Hartsfield both got snaps later into the year. Neither of them are players I necessarily care about. Sam Franklin, I at least think has a little bit of a chance to be a box guy, but nothing special. So as far as the Panthers go going into next year, I mean, they have individually talented players, especially in their front seven, but their secondary is so bad, and unless they make giant changes, you're going to probably run into a really similar situation next year where the offense is okay, but not good enough to make up for a terrible defense. But hey, with the talent they have on defense, I mean, you never know if they luck into some good corners, but I'm worried about them for sure.